Shalom. All praises, blessings, glories, and honors to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha, Quadash. Double honors to my elder apostles and bishop elders of Great Millstone, who have taught me this truth, as well of men of like mind. Shalom wa chasad, which means peace and mercy, to the elect of the nation of Israel, whom you so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native American Indians, and Israelite foreigners of the seed line of our forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, whom are scattered here in America, which is Babylon the Great, and abroad. To you I say Shalom, and Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and informative. Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 25. Destruction cometh, and they shall seek peace, and there shall be none. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3. For when they shall say, peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them, as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Ezekiel chapter 7 verse 26. Mischief shall come upon mischief, and rumor shall be upon rumor. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and counsel from the ancients. In the news, various articles. From the CNN, Chinese social media reacts to Taiwan's president meeting McCarthy.
A meeting with the potential to spark a crisis. U.S. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen meet outside Los Angeles on Wednesday, a show of democratic solidarity amid rising tensions with China.
We once again find ourselves in a world where democracy is under threat. Their presence and unwavering support reassure the people of Taiwan that we are not isolated and we are not alone.
McCarthy echoing her comments during their meeting at the Reagan Presidential Library.
The friendship between the people of Taiwan and America is a matter of profound importance to the free world.
Earlier, Tsai's arrival at her hotel met with demonstrators chanting that they love and support the president. Some holding signs that say, Taiwan belongs to the people of Taiwan, not the CCP. Others shout, Xi Jinping is not China. Chinese support Tsai Ing-wen. Anti-Tsai Ing-wen protesters take to the streets of Los Angeles as well, shouting traitor as her entourage drives past. Washington is downplaying the meeting as part of a stopover on Tsai's ways back to Taiwan. But Beijing sees Taiwan as a breakaway province that's part of its territory. It's threatening to fight back, calling the meeting a violation of its sovereignty. When then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan last summer, China responded with unprecedented military drills that simulated a blockade around the island. So far, Beijing has held routine military drills around Taiwan and launched a 3-day patrol operation through the Taiwan Strait. But the military reaction may be more muted this time since they're meeting on American soil. But that's not stopping fury from China's heavily censored social media, with comments like, let's fight, and shoot her plane down or force it to land. Every day, Taiwan already deals with Chinese fighter jets around its skies and military ships sailing off its coast. Beijing has been upping its intimidation of the island as unofficial ties between Taiwan and the U.S. strengthen. But there are reasons for Chinese leader Xi Jinping to hold back this time. He's positioning himself as a global statesman and peacemaker in Ukraine. meeting with Putin in Moscow, and brokering a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Plus, war games over Taiwan would overshadow French President Emmanuel Macron's arrival in Beijing. And while Taiwan's leader is on American soil, another symbolic meeting is taking place in China. Taiwan's former president Ma Ying-jeou is touring the country, the first ever visit to China by a current or former Taiwanese leader. He gave a speech saying people on both sides of the Taiwan Strait all belong to the Chinese nation and are all Chinese descendants. I hope both sides can work together to achieve peace and avoid war. His trip reflects the split inside Taiwan about how to deal with the existential danger. The simultaneous trip symbolizing competing views, courting the hostile neighbor to prevent war, or building up relations with a powerful force across the Pacific.
This concludes the introductory article. In other headlines, U.S. getting progressively weaker from the RT. Iran. Tehran must be ready to take advantage of the shift in global power, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said in a speech to officials. The U.S. is no longer the power it once was and has failed to rally the Arab world against Iran and curtail its nuclear program. Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said in a speech to senior officials on Tuesday. Facts show that America was weakened under Obama's administration than Bush's administration. The U.S. was weaker under Trump's administration than the way it was under Obama's administration. The U.S. is weaker under Joe Biden's administration than it was under Trump's administration. Khamenei proclaimed, according to Iran's Tasnim news agency. Khamenei noted that the U.S. has failed to rally its Middle Eastern allies against Iran, declaring that what has happened is the opposite. Aside from wielding considerable influence in Iraq and Syria, Iran recently restored relations with Saudi Arabia following talks brokered by Chinese President Xi Jinping, although not a formal ally of the U.S. Saudi Arabia has been one of the U.S.'s closest partners in the region for decades and is the world's largest producer of American weapons. Now, however, Riyadh has rebuffed Biden's calls to boost oil production and is discussing trading energy in currencies other than the US dollar. Furthermore, the Ayatollah continued, the US wanted to put an end to the nuclear program through political pressure and sanctions, but it failed, which is true. These are the facts. At present, the U.S. is reportedly discussing a deal whereby Iran would freeze its enrichment of uranium above 60% in exchange for sanctions relief, because the U.S. had placed heavy sanctions upon Iran for many years. And remember, it is written here in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3, for when they shall say peace and safety, then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Esau Edom has a history of reneging or breaking his treaties, his contracts that he had made with others, and to make another agreement with Iran to halt their enrichment in exchange for lifting sanctions would be no different. Another example was the JCPOA agreement concerning nuclear warheads, which, by the way, if my memory serves me correct, under President Trump, the U.S. had left. If my memory serves me correct, brother can fact check that. And we'd mentioned in the past that eventually these nuclear treaties will come to naught, because we are in a season of war, according to Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, the 8th verse. And this is why the Lord Yahweh Bahashem Yahushai has been putting it into the minds or the hearts of these different kings and princes of these different superpowers and weaker nations that are now stronger to prepare for war. Because we are in the season of war. And not just any kind of regular war, but a war that will be fought, according to Isaiah chapter 9 verse 5, with burning and fuel of fire. And that war is known as the Third World's Woe, according to Revelation chapter 11 verse 14. Hence the reason why these nations have been beating their plowshares into swords and their pruning hooks into spears. That is to say that they've been taking their economic wealth and using them towards the research, development, and enhancements of weapons of mass destruction, primarily for ICBM nuclear missiles, which are the weapons of the Lord's indignation, according to Jeremiah chapter 50 verse 25. So again, when they shall say peace and safety, and this applies generally as well, especially in regards to you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians and Israelite foreigners who trust so dearly in Esau, Edom. According to Isaiah the 30th chapter, which, instead of quoting it, let's get it and read it real briefly. Isaiah chapter 30, verse 3, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame. Who are the modern day Egyptians? The Edomites, beginning with their banking families, their elites. And who's Pharaoh? The president, who currently is Joe Biden. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt, and America is modern day Egypt, according to Revelation chapter 11 verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt. So America is modern day Egypt, spiritually. And therefore, your trust in the shadow of Egypt is going to be a confusion. And so reading on, it says, and the trust in the shadow, in the protection, in the military might, in the welfare that Egypt offers you, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, in the form of SNAP, food stamps, various other benefits, will eventually be cut off and lead to your confusion. Especially for you so-called black women. And the trust in the shadow of Egypt, your confusion. So many great miseries are ahead for you Israelites that trust in this man's system. So finishing off in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 3, when they shall say, so when they're going to promise you people peace and safety, they, as in your president, your governors, your mayors, your local leaders, when they will promise you peace and safety in the presence, in the times and the evils of destruction, then sudden destruction, so that's when destruction will come upon you suddenly. Then sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. So people won't be able to escape the destruction that is to come. Now, going back to the article, it reads on. At present, the U.S. is reportedly discussing a deal whereby Iran would freeze its enrichment of uranium above 60%, in exchange for sanctions relief. Tehran has rejected the proposal. U.S. news outlet Axios reported on Monday. The Ayatollah went on to note the rise of several anti-American governments in Latin America, because Latin America has been moving their allegiance to BRICS, and the diplomatic consequences of the EU taking the brunt of the war in Ukraine on Washington's behalf, because that war is a war between the U.S. and Russia. That's a proxy war. Even Kennedy himself recently came out and said that either him or one of the previous U.S. presidents who allegedly has some forms of regrets for having Ukraine disregard their nuclear arms. I'd read it earlier somewhere. Anyway, I digress. It says, on Washington's behalf, as examples of the U.S. waning influence. In order to take advantage of this opportunity, we must increase our dynamism. The word dynamism or dynamism is energy, spirit, liveliness, zestfulness, vitality. To further expound upon it, philosophical system in which matter consists essentially of simple and individual units, substances or forces, especially one that reduces to matter to force. Dynamism is a general name for a group of philosophical views concerning the nature of matter. However different they may be in other respects, all these views agree in making matter consist essentially of simple and indivisible I'd said individual earlier. Units. It seems to be completely different. Actually, what is this? So this is the better definition. The quality of being characterized by vigorous activity and progress. Okay, so basically progress. Vigorous progress, vigorous activity, initiative and activities in foreign policy, vigorous energy initiatives and activities in foreign policy, Kamani said. So this concludes the article. So a lot of interesting things are happening around the globe, and these nations are seeing that the U.S.'s strength is weakening, it's waning. Scripture says we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Take balm for her, because the Lord has corrupted this place. The Lord is basically setting the final stages, if you will, for the lack of words, before he completely, according to biblical prophecy, destroys it. Now, in the last piece of news, this is from Dabu. Big victory for gun rights. Florida tips United States into a major constitutional carry nation. This is all setting the stage for when shit hits the fan. According to 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor. Men are going to take things into their own hands, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And that is prophesied by our Lord Yahweh Shai in the book of St. Matthew, the 24th chapter, the 12th verse. Now let's listen to the information.
This is Dabu 7. We've got a big move here being made by Florida, as DeSantis has now signed these bills into law, making Florida the latest state here in the United States to be constitutional carry. And they say now a majority of the states are now that way. As he signed this bill into law here today, and it eliminates the requirement for an individual to obtain a permit to carry a concealed firearm. We've seen many states do this. As I said, this is now the 26th. And with this, people can flex out their freedoms a little more in Florida here and feel safer with this move. I know here in Kentucky, a lot of people loved it when our state stepped up, and you may be asking, well, why all of a sudden are all these states doing this? It's because they can smell what's coming. They can see what's coming. For everyone that's got their head in the sand, you better get aligned quick. You better get into a state that backs and supports your values in the way that you want to live your life. Because if you're caught in one of these commie places, it's game over. It's only going to get worse. Just imagine the next scam, the next series of lockdowns. So wherever you want to align yourself, that is critical at this moment. That should be all that is being talked about by anyone out there. It's tantamount to the people, your ancestors, long ago that had to make the choice to leave whatever country they were in and sail to America. You're going to have to sail to a new free land because some of these places are not free anymore. The politicians have sold the people out. And since people did not make a stand, it's got to an extreme to where, as you can see in California, people are fleeing en masse. They have been in droves into free states, so to speak, like Texas. And they're tearing this country apart if you missed it. It's all by design. So I would get aligned into a state that supports your values, again, and that ain't playing this game. I've got to commend Kentucky here that stepped up to the plate, smacking down all this stuff. Even if the governor's tried to push it through, the whole government in the state here has shot him down. And that's how it should be. So, also, know this, that if you're in a state like Ohio was, I think they may still be, where they were giving out permits. I had people that came to our last conference greatly upset because they got their medical marijuana and then turned around and were told, now you can't carry. You've lost your right to carry. And it was a trap. Well, you don't have that trap with constitutional carry. You sure don't. And here in Kentucky, for example, they just pushed in the medical marijuana thing so people have a right to be able to access that and be protecting themselves 24/7, the way that it should be. Okay, so again, make sure that you're aligned in a state that backs your way of thinking and the way that you want to live. If not, things are going to get even more tyrannical around the corner. But this is a big move. It shows that a majority of the United States is snuffing out what's going down here, and they're preparing, or at least half. So, kind of just how they want to split it right down the middle anyway. Join me for the live streams Monday and Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern for more. Dabu777. You'll find links below. Hit that subscribe button for more. This has been Dabu7. Much love.
2nd Ezra, chapter 15, verse 18. For because of their pride the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, which is the modern day gun, and spoil, which means to take their goods, their victuals, food and drink, because of the lack of bread, because famine is coming, and for great tribulation. So these things are coming, and they will come in the form of destruction collectively. Again, this is the book of Ezekiel, chapter 7, verse 25. Destruction cometh, and they shall seek peace. So when they're going to be attempting to seek peace, and when they're going to be promised peace, that's when destruction which cometh will come suddenly upon them, and they shall not be able to escape. As there shall be none, so there will be no peace. Okay? And there shall be none, and mischief shall come upon mischief, and rumor shall be upon rumor. Then shall they seek a vision of the prophet, but the law shall perish from the priest, and counsel from the ancient. So T.D. Jakes, Creflo Dollar, Joyce Myers, Joel Osteen, Farrakhan, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all these different leaders that our people look up to, they won't have the answers. Okay? They won't have the answers to why the Lord will be bringing all these evils upon the earth in the very near future. So with that, I conclude this lesson. Lord's willing, it was edifying and informative. This has been another in the news. To the elect, I say shalom.